Alright guys, welcome to another RealCast. I am James and I'll be your host today. Today I have with me a new Ben.
Hey there, it's me, Ben.
Next I have Kobe with me.
Yeah. Call me Barrett.
Yeah.
Because the other Kobe is with us today as well.
So, yeah, and I'll be going by Fox tonight.
Yep, so we have Fox as well. And then we have Jackson.
Hey.
Yep. Alright, so we're gonna go straight in. So Star Wars 7 released after many years of a hiatus of no Star Wars. Everybody thought that the story was over, it was all resolved. But then suddenly out of nowhere, Disney announces Star Wars 7 and the hype explodes, basically. Everybody was going to see it. It was definitely an addition to the story. It wasn't just filler. What do you guys think of it?
Yeah, well, that was 2 years ago, man. That's a long time ago. A lot of people say that. I mean, I'd argue this too, that Star Wars 7 was patterned after A New Hope.
Oh, absolutely.
There's so many similarities. It
was
I
the
know
same, just Luke was a girl.
Yeah, I wasn't bothered by it, but I know a lot of people who just thought, hey, they're just making the same series over again. That's dumb.
It's kind of true, and as a big Star Wars fan myself, I was a little bit disappointed with the lack of entirely original material, but at the same time, it does have some significant differences as far as plot progression can go. While the first movie itself was definitely a copycat, and certainly not the best work of the Star Wars series, if you ask me, I feel like it opens up a lot of roots for the 8th and the 9th movies to become something really original and all their own that could honestly bring the sequel trilogy well above, certainly the prequels, and up to par with perhaps even the original trilogy.
I remember going back, and before I watched Star Wars 7, I rewatched the original trilogy movies.
Hey, same. Yeah,
me too. And I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for this, but to be honest, other than the sentimental value, they aren't as amazing as
I have to agree.
as everybody makes them out to be. But I do recognize that they're pretty old movies. They're their visual effects were spot on for the time and things like that. I just think we shouldn't be judging this new trilogy based on nostalgia, basically, that we felt for the original series.
I feel like it actually does have a pretty significant story. I'm not saying it's mind-shattering, but I do think that it actually is still pretty solid.
I feel what's more significant to note about its story is that it brought back the Western. Star Wars is a Western film.
It is.
It takes place in space, but it's a Western. And it was a genre that had been missing for decades from the film industry. And it brought it back in such a refreshing and original manner. And that's really one of the things that made the original so great. And what I felt was lacking from the new one. Not only did it feel somewhat like a copycat of the fourth, but the elements that made it such a classic space western were missing. It played out a lot more like a fantasy action movie. And again, like I said, really lost a lot of its luster.
Yeah, well, I think another important thing is to consider where Star Wars came from. I'm pretty sure that George Lucas, before Star Wars, he wasn't known for anything. He was...
Besides THX 1138, but that was super indie.
Right, but as far as I can understand...
Indie enough everyone laughed at me.
Yeah. As far as I can understand, Star Wars, it wasn't expected to be a big thing. It was a low budget movie. It was it had a small budget, and I doubt they were expecting to go anywhere with it, but then it just exploded when it came out.
And as you can see with the ending of the fourth movie, Star Wars was a standalone. They defeated the Empire and it was over. Only when they realized it could be incredibly profitable and George Lucas decided he could develop a good story for it did it become a trilogy. It was originally intended to just be Star Wars.
Interesting.
And that was it.
And now there's a 7th movie.
Whatever that's worth,
And apparently a new trilogy.
More than 7 movies. I mean,
right.
So they did the Clone Wars, and there's Rogue One. There. What more? What am I missing?
I think that's all the movies, but there are lots of, I mean, thousands of novels, comic books, graphic novels, TV series, video games that are canon, fan lore.
Plug and plays.
Seriously, though. I mean, epic amounts of Star Wars content that have really made the universe huge. Like, one of my favorite time periods in Star Wars is the Old Republic era, and it's honestly bigger and richer than a lot of the lore within where the movies are, and it's huge with a fan base, but it's not in the movies, you know, like the lore and the universe is so huge and rich in that way.
Yeah, I think they definitely have a lot of material to go off of. Well, I don't know. Do you think that 7 was original, or was it has the lore already been written beforehand?
I feel like number 7 was pretty much just a copy and paste, essentially. Well, not really a copy and paste, but I feel like it was just kind of upgraded number 4, like with better effects and, you know, like better actors and stuff. But really what it all boils down to is, for me, it just didn't feel like Star Wars, you know? Like, and that's like, I feel like it didn't have the same magic as the original trilogy did, and
absolutely.
that kind of broke the movie for me, for whatever reason.
And, I mean, to say it's unoriginal is only true to an extent. While it does feel a lot like the fourth, like we've been saying, it is technically original content, you know. The story and the characters are nowhere else in Star Wars lore. Those were entirely original characters, and as original as you can get with the way we've prefaced it, plot points. If they could have done a lot of things with existing lore, but I feel it was intentional that they chose not to, so that they weren't limited and judged by the fans based upon their interpretation of already created content. They created something original, I feel. Obviously, I don't know this for fact, but I feel they created something new so that they could have their artistic liberty with it and make something they were comfortable with, didn't have to consult and worry about what the fans would think. They could just make something new.
Right.
And yeah, as similar as it was, I think that was on purpose. Like, I feel like
Definitely.
it actually was a good way to revamp the series. Like, knew that they needed to have something new, and so they went back to something that they'd already done that their fans already like, but with new ideas, new special effects, newer characters. So yeah, it is similar, but I do think that the next few movies in the trilogy are going to be different.
They have a lot of room to explore, and I agree with you fully. I'm very excited for the upcoming features.
Yeah. For this number 8 movie coming out.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, and I agree with you what you're saying. They need something new. The prequel trilogy kind of left a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths, and
Definitely.
I think that, I mean, personally, I think Episode 3 was actually really good, aside from the awful ending. But otherwise, I think it was actually a really good movie. I like its darker tones. It kind of took the Empire Strikes Back route, in my opinion. But
Definitely. With it had a stark tonal shift, as did the fifth with Irving stepping in.
Well, that's actually where I'm kind of having an issue with Episode 8. I feel like they're just doing that again. From the moment that they showed this thing in his first trailer, it was immediately apparent with the darker color schemes, the new red font and everything, that this is a much darker movie than The Force Awakens. And so I'm afraid we're falling into the same trap again, where Last Jedi will essentially be a reskin of The Empire Strikes Back. But that's just kind of...
I definitely see where you're coming from, and I agree with you. I hope it doesn't happen. But a shift in tone is not indicative of plot. I feel that's important to note.
Yeah, but it is true that you're more likely to fall into common plot elements and stuff like that in certain tones.
One big improvement that I'm actually really happy about with the new Star Wars movies is that they actually brought in good actors.
Yeah.
Like with the prequels are notorious for having just the worst acting, and
Absolutely.
I think that's why they're hailed as like the worst Star Wars movies.
And not only
And
that,
that's actually
they had,
what I was about to say is, honestly, the first movies, their plot is actually good.
It's good.
The plot is good.
Yeah.
But the acting is...
and
And that reaction right there is enough to say what I would have said in volumes.
no, like, and adding Jar Jar Binks as a character.
Yeah.
Which,
Come on,
interestingly enough,
Yeah.
George Lucas has spoken out about Jar Jar Binks. It's a shame you have to speak out against him. He was added as a cash grab. They intended Jar Jar Binks to be... I want to say, first of all, that the Ewoks were not added as a cash grab. They actually thought they would be a good plot point. Jar Jar Binks was added to be essentially the prequel trilogy's equivalent of the Ewoks. Something they could sell merchandise of. It was supposed to be that little kids, their parents would be big fans, they'd bring their kids to see the new Star Wars movies. They'd laugh at Jar Jar Binks' stupid fart joke, and they'd buy the merchandise. It was a pure cash grab. Lucas admitted it, and it's safe to say that we are moving past the era of Jar Jar Binks and such things like that. They're focusing, hopefully, they're focusing on the story and keeping it where it should be.
Not necessarily though. Have you guys seen it in the new
that little thing?
The part in the new
Yeah.
in the trailer with the little like porg thing. I think it's called a porg.
Yeah.
The thing that next to Chewbacca, and he's like,
like the cute little like bird thing.
That's totally
That
marketing.
is absolutely.
There's gonna be so many stuffed animals of those.
The one thing I do want to
everywhere.
say, though, is, and a lot of people say Disney's killing Star Wars because they're making it this way. I do feel, though, with this kind of a concept of the children's character, Disney has a lot more experience with this. I have more faith in Disney being able to pull it off than like
George.
early 2000s George Lucas.
Absolutely.
I have a lot more faith in the Porg than Jar Jar Binks.
Especially because he can't talk. Well, at least yet. But I do have to say that while we're kind of hating on, well, not hating, but we're being pretty harsh critics of The Force Awakens, I think Rogue One is fantastic.
Oh,
And
yes.
if we get more movies like that, then I am all game for more Star Wars movies. Because like Ben and I were talking about this a little earlier before we started, it feels like Star Wars. Like there's that classic magic. And for me personally, why I love it so much is because there's actual tragedy in this movie. Every single one of the characters that like has a unique character development that you grow attached to dies at the end. Like, wow, like way to pull out your... I know,
Spoilers.
at this point it's too late. But like way to pull at the heartstrings. Like really, I can't think of many other times that a Star Wars movie, aside from like, I don't know, like maybe the very end of 3, like I was gonna say, like, but other
Which,
than
if
that,
the acting was better, that would have been utterly devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like that actually like had me thinking as I left the theater, like, holy crap, like that was an ending I will not forget. And the way it's so elegantly built into episode 4, like they recreated it. Oh, like Rogue One, fantastic. If we get more like that, I'm so good.
Yeah. And about the new Han Solo movie that's coming out next year.
Yeah.
I hope it's good, right? But I'm worried it won't be because they switched directors halfway through.
Oh yeah.
Did you guys know that?
Yeah,
the director, the first director quit. I don't know why he quit. But there's two different directors, and when that happens, a lot of movies just go downhill.
I've been keeping a sharp eye on it because I'm interested in it, partly because Lando Calrissian is played by a favorite rapper of mine.
Yes!
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Donald
Almost
Gambino.
quoted a crust verse there.
Well,
But he has experience directing, and I feel with such a primary role that his presence on set gives me faith in the whole film. He really is a gifted artist, and I feel with its really phenomenal story, both of its directors have been good, and the presence of really solid actors on set, I have high hopes for it. I don't think it'll fail us.
I agree.
would the director quitting be a bad sign though? Because I mean, like, what
Yeah.
reasons does he have to quit?
Yeah.
There's so much money involved in this. He probably had a very good reason to be quitting.
And again, I've been looking at it, and they haven't released anything about it. The directors haven't said anything. The studio hasn't said anything. I don't know if it was a contractual thing, if it was creative differences. Honestly, no one knows.
Oh yeah, I didn't know it was a
Yeah,
thing
it's only-
until you just mentioned it. Like, I
It's
didn't know they were making
it's
a
very
Han Solo
much
movie.
shrouded in mystery.
To relate this to another story, this reminds me of another very popular franchise. Final Fantasy 15 came out last year, and that game is notorious for having a director shift, which I think created a very divided reaction. And I'm afraid that the similar thing could happen with Han Solo's movie. It's very evident that the first half of Final Fantasy 15 is different than the second half. I'm worried that with this Han Solo movie, like halfway through the movie, we're going to notice an immediate overall change through the entire thing. And I'm not saying it couldn't work. there have been examples in the past of two directors working together and just sharing a vision. But more likely than not, especially because, like you were saying, why would he quit? You know, I don't know how that's going to affect it. And it's only a year away, and we still don't know anything about it, I feel like. Like, I haven't seen any teasers or anything, which I guess maybe because it's...
They want to
about,
focus
yeah,
on
yeah, I was going to say, but...
Yeah, the way they're franchising it, they're keeping very focused on next year's movie.
Yeah.
We didn't get any sort of Last Jedi trailers until within 3 months of its release, which is a very short date in which to do this for such a high box office title. They're definitely trying to keep the consumer focused on what's next. They want to get you to the theater, they want you to buy the merchandise, and then they want you to do it again next year. They don't want to get all caught up in the future.
Yeah. And this kind of ties into one of the main points I wanted to bring up with this discussion. Will this hype burn out? Is this just a bubble waiting to burst?
Yes.
And I actually am of the opinion that if they don't do some sort of radical plot change that just grabs everyone's attention with The Last Jedi, that it could be. And I have some numbers. I'm not just speaking like whatever. I actually have some numbers to back me up. First off, going purely on trailer views, The Force Awakens has essentially 100 million views. Rogue One has 40. Yeah, that's not even as much as you would think Star Wars would get.
Near.
Rogue One has 44, which is a significant decrease. But get this.
More than 50%.
Get this. The Last Jedi's most viewed trailer has 40 million, less than the spin-off movie, which I think would be frightening to Disney and telling that super enormous demand for a Star Wars movie isn't there. It just isn't. Even if you're a fan, it's not what it used to be. I'm not saying there's no demand, but there is definitely less.
I feel that what really got attention for Star Wars 7 was just the fact that they hadn't done one in so long.
Exactly.
And so it was just like a novel thing, but now it's not anymore. They've already done 2 movies.
Yeah. For me, when the hype burned out, it was actually before Rogue One. Like, and you know, when I left the theater for Rogue One, I was like, oh, okay, I can't wait for the next Star Wars movie next year, you know? And so it's like you already know another one's coming out.
Yeah.
And so it's not, it's like the excitement when you first found out that they were making another Star Wars movie, Star Wars 7, you were like, what? You know, that's insane.
Yeah.
But now that they're doing one every year, you're like, oh, okay, I'll go next year and the next year, but it's not, you know, it's not as, you know.
And that's exactly their problem, because going all the way back to the original in 77, it was a standalone movie. Everyone loved it and they freaked out. And then it was like almost 5 years later when the next movie came out, and it was a big deal because it was this huge fan favorite coming out with a blockbuster sequel. It was a big deal. And then they decided it was a trilogy and everyone knew. So everyone flocked for episode 6 a few years later because the story everyone loved and was so excited about was finally getting an ending. Then the prequel trilogy, everyone was hyped because it had been like another decade or 2 since the last movie. So the hype was live again because of time. The same thing happened to the 7th movie. But now, with the every year release schedule, the fact that we know it's going to be a trilogy, and we already know all the directorial systems with Disney, there really is no suspense as to when or how it's going to drop. We know it's going to come every other year, and we know it's going to be a Disney Star Wars movie. And that really kind of kills the buzz.
Yeah. You know, I feel like episode 8 is like a critical point for the series. Because, yeah, as you guys have been saying, the hype's burned out. People are really hoping that this is a good movie. And if it isn't, people are going to be like, this franchise sucks, and they're not going to go to any more movies. So this movie has to be good for Disney in order for them to keep going, for people to keep coming to these movies.
In fact, the only reason I think it lasted this long is because Rogue One was a really good movie. So they have to keep it up.
Yeah.
So.
And something that just blew my mind is that they've already announced another trilogy that doesn't feature any Skywalkers coming later.
What?
Which I just think, how could you already announce another trilogy?
Announced is a strong word.
Okay, well...
Highly suggested.
Okay, highly suggested. But, I mean, I feel like
it's basically
that basically proves, though, that they're more focused on the money than the story. Now, I'm not saying George Lucas wasn't, because obviously everyone's doing this for the money. But George Lucas, at least in the original trilogy, there was a passion, a burning creativity, desire to finish this story that he started. And at this point, is it just, hey, we have this series that everyone grew up loving. Can we make more money off of it?
Exactly. And I mean, these movies are going to be blockbuster hits and take away the #1 box office title for multiple weeks because it's Star Wars. The name power holds so much more than anything else at this point.
Yeah, well, I'm just really worried that Star Wars just become another Marvel.
Yes.
Marvel,
Exactly.
it's
Perfect
so
title.
obvious that it's just there for to make money. If Star Wars just becomes like that, like, yeah, it's completely lost its magic. It's just, yeah, it's
Which
just
really
a money
hurts
machine.
me as a
money
Star
factor.
Wars fan. Like, it's an important thing to me.
Yeah.
And for them to sully it like this really, really hurts me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's like Call of Duty, you know? It's like Call of Duty, you know, big names, and they just release a game every year, you know? Just get the money, get the money, get the money. And their games are not that great.
Yeah.
Like,
And
you know,
only
they're
getting worse.
mediocre.
Yeah.
They're only getting worse. And so it's like, that's what I fear is gonna happen with the Star Wars movies. They're just gonna progressively get worse and worse because they just, you know, don't put as much time into the story and everything else, and it'll just progressively get not as good.
No, well, so I think it's interesting that Kobe brought up Marvel, though, because everybody, at least that I know, has been really enjoying the Marvel movies, even though they've been cycling through the same, like, universe or stories or whatever, and they just seem like, I don't know, maybe even though they aren't being original, like, I know last episode we went on a whole big thing about being original, but like, I don't know, maybe people can still enjoy non-original movies, I guess.
Okay.
At least, at least if they're somewhat original, I should say.
Okay, so sorry to be flip-flopping so much, but back to Ben's point about Call of Duty, I think that series has already shown is somewhat of an omen for Star Wars, because I don't know how many of you know this, but Call of Duty Infinity Warfare, I believe was the name, the trailer was launched to the worst reception any video on YouTube has ever gotten. It was literally, people went to the video just to dislike it because it got such a bad name. And look at this, with Call of Duty World War II, yes, it has been considered a pretty good game, but I don't see nearly as many people talking about it as like a couple of years ago with Call of Duty. And I think that's because, unfortunately, it tarnished the name so bad that I don't know if they can make a bounce back from this, or if they do, it needs to just be enormous. And so I'm worried that if Star Wars, if Episode 8 doesn't live up to the hype and it tarnishes the name, like you were saying earlier, Kobe, it could just be, I don't know, a bad sign.
It'll
to
lose
things
its
to come.
name value,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
I feel like the difference between Infinite Warfare, World War II, and Rogue One, Episode 8, is that Rogue One was actually good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
Infinite Warfare was so bad that people have stopped caring as much, you know, for World War II, and that's why World War II, it wasn't as big as it should have been.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Rogue One was actually good.
Yeah.
It was Star Wars, and so now people are more hyped for number 8 because they were saying, you know, Rogue One was good, and so I'm going to see this next one.
Yeah.
The one thing that may be encouraging, though, is part of the reason that so much effort and resource was put into World War II and what has made it such a good game is because of the epic failure that was Advanced and Infinite Warfares. It was so bad and people were so angry. The only way to make the series viable again was to make an awesome game. They were forced to make something good instead of another serialized piece of crap. So if they end up blowing the series here, and they do end up making another trilogy, if they blow it, they might be forced to step up their game.
So maybe a bad Star Wars movie
Is what we
the
need.
gateway to
Yeah.
a good Star Wars movie.
Not saying I want a bad Star Wars movie. Best of all, they just keep making good ones. But if it does get bad, there is still hope.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was
I think that was almost
cool.
poetic the way that you ended that. I think one thing we want to make very clear is we still love Star Wars, and
Absolutely.
we're really excited for Episode 8. We just, because we love it so much, we have these concerns, and we don't want something bad to happen like we've seen so many other great series happen to. But
critics.
We're critics. So anyways, at that point, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So we'll see you guys